So, have you ever looked at a project and just wondered what separates the ones that are fine from the ones that get you hired? Well, here's the secret. It's often not about some crazy complex algorithm. It's about the clarity of its organization. We're going to dive into the one skill that screams to any recruiter that you think like a pro: project structure.
And I mean, that's the whole point, right? We're not just trying to build something that works, we're trying to build something that truly stands out. Something that proves you know what you're doing before they even read a single line of your actual code.
You know, to really get why structure is so important in React, you got to remember the problem it was built to solve. The old way of doing things was, well, it was chaos. You had HTML and JavaScript all tangled up together. It was messy, a total nightmare to maintain, and even harder to debug. React came along and introduced this whole new way of thinking, building our user interfaces from tiny, reusable, independent pieces called components.
But how does React actually manage all of this so beautifully? Well, the answer is a really simple but really powerful core philosophy.
In its absolute heart, React runs on this one idea. Your UI is just a function of your state. Think about that. It's like a math equation. Your user interface, what the user sees, is just the visual output of your application's data, which we call state. So when that data changes, React just automatically updates the UI to match. It's beautiful. No more manually digging around and changing things yourself.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the UI is just a direct reflection of the data, how on earth does React avoid the super slow, clunky process of redrawing the entire web page every single time one tiny piece of data changes? The secret sauce is this process called reconciliation, and honestly, it's pure genius. Here's how it works. First, React keeps a super lightweight copy of the page's structure in memory. We call this the virtual DOM. Now, when your data changes, it creates a brand new virtual DOM, reflecting that change. Then, and this is the magic part, in a split second, it compares the new one to the old one, finds the exact tiny differences, and then only updates those specific pieces on the actual web page. This is what makes React feel so incredibly fast and snappy.
Okay, so with that core concept under our belt, let's get to the practical stuff. Let's see how this all translates into the skill we're here to learn: building a professional project blueprint.
And here's something you really have to get. React is powerful, but it doesn't hold your hand. It won't force you to organize your files in any particular way. And that flexibility, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it puts all the responsibility squarely on you, the developer, to create a system that actually makes sense. And trust me, your project structure is the very first thing that signals whether you're a pro or not.
So this is it. This is the industry standard starting point, and for good reason. It's not just a random collection of folders. It's a logical system that pro teams use everywhere. It tells a story about how your app works. We're going to break down the most important directories inside that SRC folder: assets, components, pages, services, and utils.
First up, the public folder. This one's super simple. It just holds the single HTML file that acts as the front door for your entire React application to be injected into. Pretty straightforward.
All right, next is the SRC folder, which is short for source. This is the brain of the whole operation. This is where you're going to spend 99% of your time. Now let's peek inside and see how we organize all the code, the components, and the magic that makes the whole thing work. Starting with assets. That's just for stuff like images and fonts.
Inside source, we've got the components folder. This is basically your digital box of Legos. Any small, reusable piece of the UI, a button, a search bar, a user profile picture, it goes in here. The whole goal is to write it one time and then use it everywhere you need it. Now the pages folder is where you take all those little Lego bricks and you assemble them into a full view. So for example, your user profile page would be built by grabbing a button component, an avatar component, and a navbar component and putting them all together to create one complete screen. Okay, so what about the code that needs to talk to the outside world, like fetching data from a server? Well, that belongs in the services folder. This entire directory is just for handling all of your API calls. This keeps your data fetching logic totally separate from your UI logic, which is a massive sign of a good architecture.
And finally, we have utils, short for utilities. This is the home for all those little reusable helper functions that don't really fit anywhere else. You know, things that format dates or validate an email address. This keeps your main components clean and focused, and it's another one of those little details that shows you're thinking like a pro.
All right, now that we have the blueprint, let's actually put it in motion.
We're going to see how this structure helps you avoid the most common mistakes that beginners always seem to make.
The number one rookie mistake is dumping absolutely everything into one giant components folder. This always leads to these huge, unreadable files where nothing is separated. A professional, on the other hand, creates a clean, logical structure with small, focused files. It's really the difference between a cluttered garage where you can't find anything and a well-organized workshop where every tool is exactly where you expect it to be.
And look, this isn't just about being neat and tidy for the sake of it. It's about creating an intuitive map of your entire project. When you need to fix a bug with an API call, you know exactly where to look. The Services folder. Need to change the color of a button? You go straight to Components. This predictability makes everything faster and way less frustrating.
Okay, so let's get to the real payoff. Let's talk about why this all matters beyond just writing clean code. Why is this a career-making skill?
Well, for starters, project structure isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It evolves. You might start a small project with a simple structure, but as it grows, you adopt this folder-based blueprint we've been talking about. And for huge, massive applications, teams will even move to a feature-based structure. Just showing that you understand this progression tells recruiters you have foresight, that you're thinking about the long term.
I mean, this slide says it all, doesn't it? Without structure, your project just becomes this tangled mess that's a pain to debug and nearly impossible to scale. But with structure, collaboration is a breeze, development is faster, and what you're left with is a professional architecture that anyone on the team can jump into and understand.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to this. When a recruiter looks at your GitHub profile, a well-structured project tells them you're not just a coder who knows how to put blocks together. You're an architect who knows how to design the building. It shows you think about the big picture, scalability, maintainability, and teamwork. You're basically showing them you have a senior developer's mindset, even if you're just starting out.
So the next time you open up your code editor, just ask yourself this. Are you just writing lines of code to make something work for today? Or are you building an architecture that's designed to last, to scale, and to impress? Because that choice, that makes all the difference.